You are listening to Spiritual Insurgency with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan, a show that brings reckoning to today's culture and the impact on the body of the church. No topic is off the table on the quest to take back our churches. Join Jason and Aaron and swim against the current of the modern culture.
Welcome to 670 AM Spiritual Insurgency with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan. Today, I am going to be your host. We got Jason calling in. What is up, Jason Lupo?
You know, just out here stuck in this crazy snow. Can't make it into the studio, so calling into the show today.
Snowing across Colorado. Today, we're going to bring a second storm. If you were tuning in last week, we were having a fascinating conversation about muscular Christianity, and we have the honor and we have the blessing of a special guest today. He is the author of Muscular Christianity, a case for spiritual and physical fitness. He is a YouTuber. You can find him on Poly Athletics, 33,000 subscribers. Dr. Poly on YouTube with 45,000 subscribers. He is the published author of this book. He is advancing the culture through fitness. Welcome to Spiritual Insurgency, Paul Uponi.
Thank you. Welcome. Good. Well, glad to be here.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you, man. You titled your book Muscular Christianity. I read it. It's a fantastic read. I wanted to talk to you about some points that came up throughout the book that I think will create for very interesting conversation, because Jason and I were discussing last week that a lot of the ails in the culture, I believe, can be solved if we reignite this idea of muscular Christianity, reinvigorating the masculine heart for Jesus in the way that God intended men to live out on this earth. So I just kind of wanted to start off, Paul, with your background really briefly, why you wrote this book, and how would you define muscular Christianity in a short version of it?
Yeah. So I why I decided to write this book was when I finished high school, I just got really big into fitness, and I also reignited my faith with God. I was always born into a Christian house, but I think around college, around the time I left my family and went to my dorm in college, I started to sort of question if this belief was really mine, whether I really wanted to pursue this or not. And then I decided to do that. And I also got into fitness around that time because I used to play sports a lot when I was in high school. And, this was just a simple way for me to keep fit. And I started to really enjoy it. I started to realize I was also really good at it. And so as these things were colliding, as these two parts of my life were being reignited in a newfound way, I decided that I would try and look into the intersection of it, just because I thought that was interesting, and I just wanted to do that.
This was on your own volition, Paul?
Pardon?
This was like on your own volition, like you just had this idea. Where does the intersection of fitness and faith lie?
Precisely, yeah.
Interesting. Please continue.
Yeah, so I just looked into the intersection, and then eventually I came across this thing called Muscular Christianity, and I was like, whoa, that sounds super cool.
Right.
And then I just started looking into it more, and I realized it was a 19th century movement that was meant to reinvigorate Christian masculinity and to reinvigorate physical culture in general, because they believed, even back at that time, they believed that men were getting soft and that they were getting effeminate, and they didn't have those hardy virtues as much anymore, and they wanted to cultivate that again through fitness. So to give like a pithy sort of two-sentence summary of what muscular Christianity is to me, it is the intersection between faith and fitness in order to cultivate the hardy virtues, such as courage, such as mastery, such as confrontation, such as strength, and applying that, not just using its physical manifestation for spiritual purposes.
Do you think that the world is ripe for this message? Do you think that currently in the culture, men are looking for an alternative to hedonism, nihilism, effeminization? I also feel like a lot of young men are not being drawn to traditional Christianity. They're looking at secular self-help gurus like Andrew Tate and Goggins. Can you speak to the current culture? You sound like a young man. Maybe you can tell us how old you are, and maybe share why you think this is a timely message for the culture right now.
Yeah, so I am a young man. I'm 24 years old. I was 23 when this book released. The book is about a year old now. And I believe this message is very timely for our culture because there is a sort of malaise going on, especially with young men. They feel displaced. They feel as though they're being attacked by everyone. Some people say that masculinity is toxic and all their virtues of wanting to compete and wanting to win, that's all toxic. And then there's other people who say, hey, your masculinity isn't toxic, and they try and use it for perhaps insidious ends. There's the Andrew Tates. But even people like David Goggins, and I even mentioned the Stoic philosophers quite a bit in my book, they have some good advice, and I think that they are generally good influences. I'd rather have them be influencing people as opposed to like people in the manosphere or like the red pill sphere or whatever.
Sure.
If your audience is familiar with that. But I thought that they're still lacking, that there's still something that they're missing, and of course that is the truth. That is the truth of Jesus Christ. And I thought that I could be a sort of bridge between, hey, masculinity isn't toxic, masculinity is a good thing. Here's how you can use masculinity. So I'm elevating from, masculinity is bad to masculinity is good. And then they use masculinity for bad ends. And then I decide that I'm going to shift that, have masculinity used for all these good ends. And I'm going to incorporate Christ into that to sort of perfect those good ends.
Why isn't the church, forgive me, please, what were you saying?
I was going to say there's a lot of, push through with your own willpower. You can do this, it's all on you. But, it is important to acknowledge the fact that we do have a will and we should be using our power. But that will is not perfected unless it has God infused in it. And God can also animate our will to even further heights than we could on our own. So we need a perfected will, and we need a will that is animated even further with God.
Wow, that's powerful. Why hasn't the traditional church attracting young men today?
Yeah, so there's probably quite a lot to be said about this, and I explore some of that in my book. What I more or less say is that there's a lot of focus on, one half of Christianity. There is a focus on the gentler side and the soft side, and then those things are obviously true. Those things are necessary, and that's perhaps how Christianity is able to do so many humanitarian things around the world, in that it has a huge focus on compassion, on those kind of virtues. But there's also the other side of Christianity, which has the flipping table. Jesus flipped tables. He called out sin for what it was. And I think that guys, when they see that kind of authenticity, that kind of just rugged, I'm just going to call things how they are. I'm going to speak the truth no matter what anyone says. That sort of defiant, rebellious nature really appeals to young men specifically. And that's why, we had this election in the USA. I'm not in the US, but you guys in the US. They're saying that young men are leaving the Democrat Party. And I think it's because the Republicans are the ones who are being the very rugged, the very defiant. And they speak to that sort of crowd, and I think that Christianity has a lot of room for that as well. And I think that's at least part of the reason why I think that a lot of the churches are declining. If you look at the statistics, a lot of the church decline is actually a lot of the male church decline, I should say, is in the more less traditional churches, whereas the more traditional churches, they feel as though they're grounded in something serious, and they're more open to calling out those sort of things. And I think that that's part of the reason why the church has not been able to, at least recently, align with the interests of young men. And I think that muscular Christianity could be an antidote to that.
So in other words, you mentioned in your book that the evangelical church, the Protestant church here, at least in the U.S., maybe it's true in Canada, has been effeminized, and it's appealing more to women. Is that, you're of the opinion that that's part of the reason why we're not attracting young men into the body of Christ?
Yeah, that's part of the reason, yeah.
I want to dig into this idea because you start off in chapter 1 talking about the body as a temple, and you mentioned that we can use our body to give God glory, and that our body is important to God. It's not less important necessarily than the spirit. And I think that's embodied in the Trinity, right? That God is 3 in 1. Like the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, we as humanity are body, soul, and spirit. I think that's indicated in 1 Thessalonians 5:23. Can you talk about, in the context of muscular Christianity, how is the body used to glorify God, and why is this temple maybe been downplayed in the last 100 years in the church, and how that's had some negative consequences?
Yeah, so there is, generally speaking, there's been this idea in society that's like, okay, you can't judge a book by its cover. You gotta look at what's on the inside as opposed to what's on the outside. And I suppose in a sense that is true, right? You should actually, like the cover of the book, literally speaking, doesn't actually tell you the contents of the book, but it's a representation of the contents of the book. And so, God created your body. He designed it. He took a lot of care and time into creating your body. Everyone is unique. In my book, I talk about how there's like 100 billion synapses in your brain that all fire in perfect coordination to make sure you do even the most simple things. It's all really delicate, really amazing. If a human designed something as complex as the human body, we would say that person is the most genius person in the world of all time. That we say he's a genius, and that's because our body is made by a genius. God is a genius, and thus we should care about our body. If only for the reason that we should give gratitude. It's an act of gratitude to take care of it because He gave it to us, right?
Right, we're stewarding His blessings. You mentioned this idea of hylomorphism, mind and body connected. It speaks against a division that seems to be prevalent in modern Protestant churches, that there's this disconnect between mind and body, and you sort of challenge that with this idea of hylomorphism. What is that?
Yeah, hylomorphism is a concept I think it was espoused by Aristotle. It basically means that we have an essence and we have a essence and a substance. The essence is like the idea that we have in our mind of what a thing should be. It's sort of like the raw material. Like if you want to make a marble statue, for example, the marble would be substance, and then our idea of what the statue ought to look like would be the essence. And so we have a sort of there's a sort of connection there with how things are going to the raw material that we have and the way we use it. And so I get at that idea in my book about how the mind and the body they are connected, and how the body, what we do with our body, will connect to what we do with our mind. And like when we feel better, we are physically better. When we are physically better, we also feel better. So it's sort of a vicious cycle in that sense. And sure. I try to get at I try to make you understand the connection with the mind and the body, and how one part affects the other, similar to how the essence of the substance are connected to each other, or else you can't actually make anything. The mind and the body are connected to each other in a delicate way, and I understand why maybe they might think, like a lot of Protestants might think, that the spirit is more important than the body, because in a sense it is, right? Because if you had to choose, for example, like you're being persecuted, for example, right? You had to choose between saving your physical body or preserving your spirit and going to and living true to your spirit. And yeah, you should choose your spirit, but they aren't wholly disconnected. And I'm trying to make that clear. And I've even noticed in my own life that when I practice a more kinetic faith, when I decide to do things like fasting, and I try to do things like just kneeling down and praying. I didn't used to do this a lot before, but even just closing my eyes when I pray to keep myself away from distractions, and I have a sort of deeper spiritual connection. And that's a connection. Those sort of connections that I try to get at in the book. Yeah. And I spend a lot of time making sure that that's honed down. And I think I understand why. Another reason why Protestants also might think that the mind and body are really all connected is because they have this. I don't want to start a whole theological debate here, right? But there's the whole faith, and they don't think that works to do anything. So it's like, okay, as long as I believe in anything I do with my body, anything I do in this temporal realm, this vicious sort of evil physical realm, sure, it doesn't really matter, because all that matters is my spirit and where my spirit is inclined. And yeah, so I think I understand why they think that. Why they come to the conclusion that the physical body doesn't really matter, the physical world itself is like this evil thing.
But you're arguing that it has very important and that it's all connected. We're going to take a brief break. You are listening to 670 AM The Truth, Spiritual Insurgency with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation on muscular Christianity with author of Muscular Christianity, A Case for Spiritual and Physical Fitness, Paul Uponi. Stay tuned.
Teamwork is at the core of any successful organization. Full Armor Sports, led by national champion coach Jason Lupo, is now registering for school year sports programs. Full Armor is a multi-sport teaching and training organization with homeschool options available. All of Full Armor sports coaches are certified and experts in their field. Full Armor's coaches combine for over 500 years of coaching experience. They will help your kids gain fundamental skills, the concepts of teamwork, essential to being successful throughout their lives. Multiple sports options are available now, from swimming, softball and volleyball, to powerlifting and youth MMA. The faith-based approach to making sports fun and productive are a great choice for your kids at Full Armor Sports Teams. Learn more at fullarmorsportsteams.com.
For more information on Dr. Uponi and to find links for his book, join us at spiritualinsurgency.com.
Welcome back to Spiritual Insurgency on 670 AM with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan. We're back with author, YouTuber Paul Uponi. We're talking muscular Christianity. I hope you guys are bench pressing and deadlifting as you're listening to this, because I want to get in the gym right now. Luke's nodding his head over here. He's ready to go in the gym. He's flexing. I wish you guys could see this. This is amazing. Jason, are your biceps pulsating right now?
You know, I'm just sitting down and enjoying a cigar as I listen to you guys talk. So
he's not.
No, I'm not doing any bicep work.
That's okay. That's okay. Well, Chapter 2, Athletic Christianity, talks about sports and athletics and in the context of the church. And, you touch on this idea, Paul, in the book that through athletics, young men especially learn about moral humility, personal humility. They learn about temperance, being able to control their aggression. They learn about respect. And they also learn about charity. So how does the Christian reconcile competition when it seems antithetical to our call to be charitable? And how do athletics cultivate, especially young men, to be better disciples and followers of Jesus Christ?
Yeah, so on charity, I get a lot of questions on this, actually. Charity, I think if we understand charity in its proper context and its proper way, I don't think it intersects with athletics at all. And if anything, it could actually benefit, athletics can actually benefit your ability to be charitable. So I think underscored within the idea of charity is the idea that you're bringing one person up and you're at the expense of yourself. So it's sort of like a redistributive effort to sort of level the playing field because by using your riches to help someone less fortunate. And sports, the entire goal of that is to actually actively hurt the other opponent, whether that be literally or like metaphorically through the scoreboard. You want to dominate your opponent, and that seems antithetical to the idea of charity, right? Because
on its surface it seems antithetical, but it goes deeper, right?
Yeah. So what I argue is that within sports, one of the goals within sports is to improve, and by actually giving them the respect and trying, you're actually helping them because they're improving by that. And one of the goals is to one of the main goals is to show respect, and by actually using your efforts for by actually giving them your honest effort, you are respecting their talents, respecting their abilities, respecting their time, and that's actually, in a sense, being charitable. So you're not only helping them become better players, but you're also respecting them. As for competition and how that seems to be antithetical is because, it sort of goes against the, soft-hearted, be meek, be mild, understanding. But I think that there is a demarcation between, that sort of. I make the argument in the chapter 2 about I make the distinction between personal humility and moral humility.
Right.
But moral humility is where you understand your place situated under the heavens, where you understand that you are in needing of God's redemption and God's grace. Whereas personal humility, that's your ability to, are you going to be talking about, are you going to be confident in how good you are at the sport? Are you going to be maybe trash talking, and you're going to try and get under the opponent's skin? Those are two different things, and I think that there needs to be a understanding of how those things are demarcated. I think that C.S. Lewis even said something like, one of the humilities is like one of the prides is like warm-hearted. It's warm-hearted. I forget what exactly he said. He said that you're proud of your son, right? That's warm-hearted admiration, and one of the prides is like you think that you're greater than God, and those things are two different things. Even though we use the same word for them, perhaps that's a limitation with the English language, but there needs to be a better understanding of that. And I think that if you're proud of your abilities in sports, if you want to display that, and you're not injuring their identity and self as a person, their identity as a person, and you're doing it in the spirit of competition, then it's a good way of having fun. It's a good way of butting heads and being together and bantering.
Yeah, when you're playing a game, I think the ultimate trash talk is to say, I'm going to go easy on you, because that's an insult to the competitor, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But you're not going easy on me, bro. Like, I'm taking you to the paint today. Like, let's go to war. But within the context of rules and good sportsmanship, I think it's that opportunity. I think that's the reason why sports is so critical for youth. And Jason, I want you to chime in, because Jason leads youth sports. Why are sports so important to young people today?
Well, I think that sports is a outlet for our young men and women to play, to explore, to experience win, loss, all of the emotions that come along with it. I think sports is really critical for development. And if we use it right and we use it as a platform for positive youth development, or use it as a platform to share the love of Jesus Christ, it's extremely beneficial. I think I've seen throughout the course of the last, especially 10 years, this kind of attack on youth sports from different youth pastors, different churches around the country. Yes, I understand that these games are being played on Sunday, and that's a conversation that we have with our athletes and with our families all the time, that we use our bodies to glorify God. He's given us talents and abilities, and if we have the right heart set and the right mindset, and we see that we are using the gifts and talents that God has given us to glorify Him, it's an act of worship. Sport can be an act of worship, and I think we're missing that because we're so caught up in this idea that we're losing Sunday attendance, or that these youth aren't in their youth ministries because they're playing sport. Well, let's bring the ministry to them.
Amen. And I think in addition to this cultivation of the Spirit, it's a very practical call on men. In Mark 12:30, it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. Strength being physical. And in chapter 2, Paul, you mentioned that we need to be available physically and mentally, that fitness promotes this idea of enhancing spiritual practices. Do you see that this is critical for young men to just physically be fit in order to practically be able to serve and help one another and live out the gospel in the real world?
Yeah, I mean, literally speaking, you actually cannot do a lot of things if you aren't physically capable.
Right.
You won't be able to move stuff. You won't be able to do carpentry work unless you have some kind of rugged physicality. You won't be able to do any of the mechanical work unless you have some kind of physical inclination. I'm not saying in my book that you have to be some kind of bodybuilder. I think that I have experience with sports a lot, and I've experienced building muscle a lot, so that's where my focus was on in the book. But I make it clear that you don't have to be some kind of supermodel bodybuilder to glorify God or anything like that. But having some kind of rugged physicality, it makes you understand. Gives you an appreciation for your body, appreciation for creation, and your ability as your potential as a human being. And it represents not just your physical potential, but your spiritual potential, right? When you lift weights, you gain muscle slowly over time, and that's sort of analogous to your spiritual life, and how when you do prayers, when you worship God, it's slowly but imperceptibly slow, but also after a long enough time period, you start to look back at yourself and like, yeah, I've made a lot of progress in my spiritual life, and that is.
And it's practical in the obesity epidemic we have. I think John Hopkins in 2021 released research that found nearly 33% of young adults in the U.S. were obese, which is an increase from the late 1970s when only about 18% of young adults were overweight. So, I mean, if we're talking about Ozempic and all of these drugs, I think we should also be talking about fitness, right?
Yeah. And obesity is one of the best predictors of feeling bad, just not having good mental health. If you just improve your fitness, then you will, like, fitness and another thing, fitness is something else. We're like one of the best predictors of your mental health. So if you're feeling some kind of malaise, you're feeling just kind of off, and you know there's some kind of emptiness, not saying physical fitness is going to replace the kind of deep substantive love that we get from God, but it sort of primes you to be able to receive it better. And
I think in chapter 4 you talk about deadly sins, and you talk about gluttony being countered by temperance and discipline, that the mind and the body and spirit are all this metaphysical, they share this metaphysical synergy, which I thought was very well said, because what it speaks to is this idea that if we're in the gym, if we're in sports, if we're developing our physical bodies, if we're growing our muscle mass, we're going to be better equipped to combat the temptations of sin. If you're suffering from sloth, that's countered by diligence, is what I read in chapter 4, which requires discipline. And this is instilled and fostered through exercise. So I guess my question here is, does exercise kill sloth? Does actively and intentionally disciplining your body, mind, and spirit keep you a holier disciple of Jesus?
Yeah, because when you're in the habit of taking care of yourself, you're in the habit of going out and doing things, it counterbalances your spiritual inclination to not do anything. And willpower and diligence and hard work, it works ironically like a muscle. And that the more you use it, the better you are at it. The better you are at it in all areas of life. So if you're physically very active and you're physically very disciplined, you'll be in a much better position, much better primed to engage in the spiritual disciplines. And that has a clear correlation if you allow it. Now, a lot of this is if you allow yourself to be captured by God's grace, and you allow yourself to be fully engrossed in God, then being physically active will prime you to best be able to take on the disciplines of the disciplines necessary to be as effective of a Christian as you can be.
I love that. That's one of my favorite parts. In chapter 5, you title it, "I'm here for a good time and a long time." And then you counter and say, well, I'm here for a meaningful time. And you mentioned Drake, that he defines this current generation in one of his songs.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Because I think that's where our Generation Z, the men that are in your age group, are experiencing right now.
Yeah, so I know a lot of guys who will, I know it sounds like kind of a joke, like, okay, why would you say you're here for a good time, not a long time? But I know a lot of people who they actually do say this, like, unironically. They're like, yeah, hey, I'm in here. I don't really care about how long I live. I just want to party it up. I just want to
YOLO,
live a good life, and who really cares? I don't really want to be past. Someone even told me they didn't want to live past like 35. After 35, like, their life is over, pretty much.
Wow. So I guess I should just go die somewhere after the show. Crawl into a fetal position and just yeah.
But so I want to counter that by saying, hey, you should be living here for a meaningful time, regardless of the length or regardless of the length. I know that I sort of worried it like you're going to be here for a long time. You might not be here for a long time, but what's more important is you're here for a meaningful time, and that meaning is supernaturally infused by Jesus and his sacrifice on the cross. That when you fully let yourself be captured by that, then you'll live for. Then you'll see everything as having some kind of supernatural value. That your body, your mind, everything that God has given you is this holy thing that you must take care of, and that's a lot of what I try and get at in that chapter. It's trying to make you feel as though what you're doing is meaningful. Your life is meaningful, You are designed by this all-powerful God, and you should strive to make the most of this life that God has given you and become, the greatest version of yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's such a poignant message for this generation, because this generation, I think, is suffering under the burden of nihilism. Like, what is this all for? The culture is encouraging them to just sort of devalue life. I mean, we live in a culture of death, arguably, where, abortion, as we learned in this last election cycle, is one of the highest values for what appears to be half of this country, which is really scary, right? When the murder of babies seems to be the most important item on people's list. I want to ask you, this pursuit of excellence through suffering is experienced in the gym when you're trying to get gains. And that's where the true joy and the greatness is found, versus living for a good time, which rejects the pursuit of excellence while focusing on your own pleasures. Can you expand on that, how that parlays from the gym into their spiritual life and how it could rescue a generation?
Yeah, so what you often find is that when you do small things consistently, it will reap more substantive and truly great results than, just living for pleasure. Because when you actually work for something, and then you can look at what you did, and you can be like, yeah, I did that. There is a kind of there's a kind of spiritual satisfaction that you get from it. When you build. If any of you have ever built anything, even just like a massive Lego piece or something like that,
Legos are awesome.
Sort of, yeah. You just feel as though you've accomplished something, that you've done something. You've worked hard, and you've seen the results of your work, and that is a durable form of pleasure and satisfaction that you get from it. It goes beyond just mere pleasure, because you're actually it's a sort of joy that you get from it. And exercise really teaches you that, because you quite literally see yourself change, and upon that change, you also feel better. And then, the act of exercise makes you feel better. And then once you finish, once you've actually seen the results of your work, then you also feel better. And
because this marriage of spirit and fitness is such a sweet union, because they're so analogous. If you look at Hebrews 12 verses 11 through Chapter 12, verses 11 through 12, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful later on, however, produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. And just like when you're in the gym, you're following your diet, you're seeing small incremental improvements over long periods of time. You're retraining your mind and your spirit to play the long game. And in a microwave generation where everything is about instant gratification, how the TikTok needs to be high speed and the video shorts need to be 6 seconds, I believe that fitness plays as a counter solution to what's plaguing a lot of young men, and I really think I think fitness can save young men. Am I over dramatizing muscular Christianity, Paul?
No, I don't think so. I think that I would probably preface that by saying, if you allow it to, if you accompany your physicality with a spiritual discipline, then yeah, I think it can save a lot of people. I think in a sense it even saved me. If I didn't read and research and write this book, I think that my devotion to Christianity and my love for God would probably be not as high as it is currently.
Praise God for that.
So, and a lot of people, I've gotten a lot of DMs from young men. They tell me that I can just almost see the spark in their eyes when they tell me this stuff. It's just like, wow, they really resonated with it, and they really feel as though now they can pursue God with all their manly vigor, and I gave them an outlet for that. So I think that if you are inclined towards the spiritual good, then allowing muscular Christianity to saturate your life will supercharge your life.
Amen.
That's what I want to say. I wouldn't say that, exercise in and of itself, because there's so many people who exercise, right? And a lot of people who do exercise, they're not exactly the exemplars of virtue that you would think of. I think that if you situate exercise within the right context of your life and pursue it with all your might within that right context, then it can certainly supercharge all facets of your life, and including and perhaps especially your spiritual life.
We're going to take a brief break. We're going to come back with Paul Uponi, and we're going to continue this conversation on muscular Christianity. You are listening to 670 AM The Truth. Stay tuned.
Full Armor Sports Teams has a new facility for after-school youth programs. It's located at 2380 Montebello near North Academy and Union, with 2 pools for swim lessons and swim teams, a weight room for powerlifting, conditioning, and more. Full Armor Sports Teams is a Christ-centered and family-oriented organization bringing the youth of Colorado Springs together. For more info on after-school and homeschool programs, go to fullarmorsportsteams.com or call 719-629-SWIM.
For more information on Dr. Uponi and to find links for his book, join us at spiritualinsurgency.com.
Welcome back to Spiritual Insurgency on 670 AM The Truth, hosted with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan. We are speaking with author and YouTuber Paul Uponi on his incredibly powerful and important and timely book, Muscular Christianity, A Case for Spiritual and Physical Fitness. It's available on spiritualinsurgency.org and Amazon. Wanted to talk to you, Paul, about Chapter 6, Exercise and the Good Life. You mentioned that the CDC's top 10 causes of death can be reduced by exercise. And when I was reading that, I almost had this feeling that the devil wants to stop the kingdom from moving forward, not only through spiritual death, by just naturally killing off Christians. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
I mean, we're always talking about, the boogeyman and the devil, made my gas tank be empty, but, you're eating, KFC 5 times a week and you haven't been to the gym since the 90s. Like maybe, you're killing yourself here, bud.
Yeah, that's for sure. I've noticed that people either they say, oh, they don't have enough time to do it. They don't feel as though they have maybe they don't have enough time. I don't know their schedule, but there's quite a lot of people who tell me they don't have time to do this. So they're just wrapped in work, and they're just perhaps overworking themselves to the point where it's becoming unhealthy for not only for their physical lives, but their spiritual lives. I know a lot of older adult men who say they don't have time for church either. Maybe they're just too wrapped up in their work. That's perhaps another way that the devil tries to capture Christian men, capture otherwise good Christian men. And the physical side of just quite literally just dying, like what the food that you're putting inside yourself, and how that's sort of changing you. That's changing you so profoundly physically that it's in fact affecting your spiritual life. That's certainly something that's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, and in light of what's happening with MAHA, right? Make America Healthy Again, Trump's victory, and his alliance with Bobby Kennedy. I think there's a lot of attention right now on health, and what parlays perfectly with health is fitness. In order to eat well, you also want to exercise. So I really feel like God is opening up a window, that his mercy is upon us, and that we are being presented a way out. We're being told what you're eating is poison, and by staying sedentary and playing video games for the rest of your life is not going to allow you to be a good vessel or ambassador of the kingdom of God. You need to eat well. You need to eat raw foods, healthy foods, non-processed foods, drink plenty of water, get in the gym, exercise. And that's the type of Christian that I believe is going to be the most dangerous for the kingdom of God. In chapter 8, you talk about the evangelical athlete. And I was fascinated by this because in the context of the current church being viewed as effeminate, a lot of young men don't feel like they, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of young men don't feel like they have a place in the modern American church or in the Canadian church, the Western church. And if we were to be men that were in shape, jacked, loving Jesus, living out excellence with our minds, our bodies, and our spirits, that would attract other young men, similar to the way that Andrew Tate, I feel, has been very attractive to your generation. Can you speak to how our bodies can be a testimony, and how that type of authority of being physically fit can bring people to a saving knowledge of the Lord? Yeah,
so before I get into that, actually, one thing people always tell me about when I shared some of the drafts with people, they're like, oh, this sounds kind of vain, or you're just like using our flawed physicality to point to something spiritual.
They're just haters, Paul.
Yes, I am.
They're always finding a way to just poo-poo on our ideas, but that's par for the course, right?
I'm like, okay, sure, yeah, I guess I am. Like, what? You think it's bad that I'm bringing people to God? Like, I don't get the point.
Right.
So, yes, making things more attractive to certain demographics will just make them consider it. Just right off the top of their head, they're saying, hey, so this thing that they're doing is to breed this kind of man. This kind of man is what I want to be. So I'm going to look into this more and give it a serious shot. And
can you tell me about the halo effect?
Yeah, the halo effect is a psychological term. I took psychology in college, actually, so getting most of my degree.
I took beer in college.
Yeah, okay.
But please continue.
But yeah, the halo effect is when people see exemplary characteristics within you, they associate that with good things, and they want to embody that. They're more interested in that. They want to embody that for themselves. So when a girl is attractive, for example, you just assume that they have all these other good things about them. You assume they're probably generous, they're probably kind.
That's usually the opposite, right, Paul?
Things aren't even true, but you just assume that. So when you see someone who is strong, when you see someone who is also a Christian, you assume all these other things about them, that they're probably that they're determined, that they have some kind of purpose, and that they are like spiritually and physically in good shape, and that's just naturally what people want for themselves. They want to be holistically in good shape. And the thing is that we're actually using this for a good end. We're actually using this psychological concept for a positive end. And when you are just muscular and you also have that kind of faith, even if you just show the faith, you don't even say anything to them. I've had people in my own life just like they've been interested in. I tell them I'm a Christian, they're just kind of interested because now they're like, okay, this guy's a Christian and he's like the biggest guy in the gym. Yeah. Maybe I should consider this thing because I want to be like this guy and everything about this guy.
I've always wanted to be the biggest guy in the gym. I never have been though, Paul. I'm 5'8" in the summer, man.
All good. You'll get there one day,
But I'd have to go sideways because I'm only 5'8", so I'd have to get like super bulky. I'll have to be like a power lifter or something.
You know what? I'm actually the same height as you. So
you are? Okay. There's hope. Okay, cool. Or I need to go to a different gym. In chapter 9, you talk about physical and mental fortitude, and you have this quote from Plato that I thought was so great. He who is only an athlete is too crude, too vulgar, too much a savage. He who is a scholar only is too soft, too effeminate. The ideal citizen is the scholar-athlete, the man of thought and the man of action. And I was so inspired by this marriage of being intellectual and at the same time being physical. And I remember researching on this topic of muscular Christianity, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it came out of this rejection of the gentleman during the Victorian era, that they, got fancy and went inside and kind of stopped working the land, and they found themselves sitting around talking about ideas, but never being able to physically defend it, and being critical of the man out in the field who was physically strong, but maybe, we would call a meathead today, who's, too stupid and too simple to be able to actually understand the ideas and even though he could be able to defend them. And I felt this combination teaches a really powerful principle. Can you talk about this physical and mental fortitude that comes out of muscular Christianity?
Yeah. So as we defined before, the mind, the body, and the spirit should all are all connected. And I want to try and maximize them for all their worth. So quite literally speaking, when you exercise, you are priming yourself to, I believe it's brain-derived neurotropic factor, BDNF, which helps your memory and your ability to absorb new information. So if you soak yourself up with new information and you try and learn while accompanying that with exercise, then you're priming yourself in the best-case scenario to be an intellectual. Let's just call it an intellectual barbarian.
Intellectual barbarian. I want to be an intellectual barbarian, just like Jason Lupo.
Yeah. So you'll be able to be smart, and you'll be able to be smart. Smart, and you'll be able to be strong.
Right.
And
yeah,
so
William Butler said
that kind of combination.
Yeah, the William Butler said the nation that will insist on drawing a broad line of demarcation between the fighting man and the thinking man is liable to find its fighting done by fools and its thinking done by cowards. So
precisely, yeah.
We need intellectual barbarians in the church, do we not?
Yeah, precisely. And I think that Like, you even found it very intriguing and very fascinating, just the idea of being so strong and being so intellectual that you can defend your position not just physically but also intellectually, and you also have the right spiritual inclination, but so that you have the right opinion because you're spiritually inclined towards the right thing, and you're physically able to defend it, and you're mentally able to defend it. So I think that just the fact that you were intrigued so much by that quote shows how our bodies and how we are meant to, as humans, we are meant to maximize all these areas of our life, and we find it intrinsically very satisfying and cool, for lack of a better word, when someone has maximized all of that.
Yes. And in chapter 12, I want to switch over to this muscular Christian model. You talk about the cardinal virtues of men are strength, courage, mastery, and honor. And you bring up this, what I think was a Greek word, and I'm going to mispronounce it, arete. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Arete.
Arete. Yeah. I knew it. I was going to mispronounce it. What is arete, and what is the muscular Christian model?
Arete is excellence in all areas of life. It just means excellence in physical, mental, spiritual, that you are virtuous, that you are kind, that you're also strong, and you just maxed out, you maxed out all of your stats, so to speak. And they had that kind of word because that's what the Greeks thought was the ideal citizen, someone who can master all areas of their life. And the muscular Christian model relates to that because it is incorporating your physical, your mental, and your spiritual, and it's maximizing all of that to the will of God, for the will of God. And I also talk about how in muscular Christianity, the muscular Christian also uses these to complement each other. So they don't see the physical, the mental, and the spiritual as opposing forces, but they see the physical as something that can augment the spiritual that can augment the physical, and the mental that can augment the physical and the spiritual. They all work together, it's all in combination, and they all work in unison. That's the true muscular Christian model and the true muscular Christian ideology. Maybe
the Renaissance man. We need him back.
Yeah, exactly.
Chapter 13, you talk about strength under control. A muscular Christian understands his capacity to hurt people physically because of his strength, but has the morality to govern that for the use of good. And Jesus is the greatest example, right? He was stern and authoritative with evil. He did not tolerate sin. He said he did not come to bring peace, but a sword. And I think that the public relations of the modern Western church is the exact opposite, where it's very feminine. A lot of the songs are the love of God, and all those things are true, but I just don't think the church is doing a good job of appealing to men. Can you talk about this strength under control and what you were discussing in chapter 13, especially when Aquinas said a lack of the passion of anger is a vice. We must hate what is evil. And I also want you to also define meekness.
Yeah, so having the strength and having it under control and having the ability to hurt someone and using it, but using your strength accordingly is the mark of not just you're physically strong, but it's also the mark of strong virtue. So that's the interconnection there between virtue and strength. And then meekness, which is derived from the Greek word praus, which means having strength and not using any more than necessary, having strength under control. It is like I don't know, I can't think of a peaceful animal that's strong, but like a peaceful animal that's strong.
Yeah, like an ox. They're really strong, but they're not a predator.
Yeah, they will protect their loved ones if you step on their toes. But if you're just in good relations with them, then they won't do anything.
Yeah,
and I think that is just a part of what we should be striving towards as muscular Christians, to have that kind of ferocity and feral get-at-itness, for lack of a better word, if the time comes, but not to use any more than necessary, not to try and start any confrontation, and be able to use your strength unto the good of reason, rein it in the good of reason, and to use it to fight the battles in the culture, in the world, that ought to be fought for.
Yeah, because in your book, you make the argument that we need men in the church. With 60+% of American or Western church attendance being female, we need men in order to survive as a faith, as a church. And I think a lot of the Scripture has been effeminized or perverted, like turn the other cheek. I think what you were arguing a moment ago, it means standing your ground. It's an instructions to change hearts, and in the context, it was challenging the Mosaic law of eye for an eye. It wasn't be a doormat and be taken advantage of. And I think a lot of people, men specifically, that look at the Christian faith are seeing this weak Jesus, right? They're seeing the Jesus on the stained glass window holding the sheep and being soft. And nowhere in the Bible does it speak against murder. Against war. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that killing is wrong. It's saying that murder is wrong. And I thought that was a really interesting point you made, referring to Exodus 20:13. And you also addressed the don't judge thing in Matthew 7:1-3 that's been weaponized. Can you briefly, because we're running out of time, talk to us about this idea of murder versus killing, the judgment? Those scriptures have been perverted, and it's turned men off, and they need to reevaluate that in the context of the masculine Christian.
Yeah, so murder and killing are very different things. I guess every murder is a killing, but not every killing is a murder, if you want to look at it that way. In Exodus themselves, there's rules that if you break them, then you get the death penalty. So that means that, every single act of killing obviously isn't wrong. Mm-hmm. So killing would be just someone dies by your hands, whereas murder would be the unlawful, or I guess immoral, killing of an innocent life. I guess that's probably how I put it. I think I had a more pithy definition in my book, but the unjust killing of an innocent life, I can go with that. And as for, what was the one, turn to the cheek? Or...
Yeah, turning the other cheek, being meek. A lot of that, I think, has been perverted into not showing Jesus for who he truly was.
Don't judge.
Yeah, don't judge. Jesus was telling us how to judge, that we're to stand for righteousness, we're to have opinions. What does that mean, don't judge?
Yeah, so, if you look at the Bible, it does say don't judge somewhere. But if you actually read, the verses preceding and after it, before and after it, then you'll see that he's actually saying, hey, don't judge don't judge your neighbor unless for the speck in their eye when you have a plank in your own eye. It's saying that, look, you have your own issues, and you should be far more concerned about your own virtuous life than you are in getting up in every little detail about your neighbor's issues. And then I think in John 17 or so, I believe, he says, hey, judge with righteous judgment, which implies that, which actually corroborates what he says in Matthew in the Sermon on the Mount, which is about, you should actually judge rightly and judge justly. And this commandment to just not judge ever is just not substantiated whatsoever. When you look at anything in creation, look, Genesis, it says this is good. Creation is good. God created the heavens and the earth, and he called it good, right? That's a judgment. Almost every page in the Bible is some kind of judgment or referring to some kind of judgment. Judging just means having an opinion on something. It's kind of impossible to go your entire life without having any opinion on anything. So
Right. Yeah, you're not allowed to have an opinion anymore. Well, we got a couple minutes left, Paul. I want to give you the floor, and Jason, if you want to jump in, please do. But what would be parting words for, especially the men that are listening right now, that maybe are sitting outside of faith or are in the faith? What do they need to consider? Parting words on muscular Christianity, Paul, Uponi.
Yeah. So what I would say is your competitive instinct, your desire to be the greatest, you see these memes of, I want to be the strongest person in my bloodline, and you see a bunch of crazy people in your bloodline, and I want to be the greatest of them. That desire that you have to be great, to be your best, is not only compatible with Christianity, but I think it is augmented with Christianity. You have this all-powerful, all-knowing God on your side, who is basically a supercharged, he is like a spiritual steroid, for a relevant metaphor.
Love it, spiritual steroid.
Yeah. So he will charge, if you allow him to, he can charge your life, and he can marshal your strength in ways that you couldn't imagine. And you shouldn't see your potential and your self-actualization as something that is antithetical to Christianity, but something that is in corroboration with Christianity, that can be augmented further. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to pursue physical excellence, you want to be an athlete, you want to be ambitious, and all these things that you want to do, and you keep getting demonized for it. You don't have to do that. You can as long as it's understood in the right way, it can actually augment your ability to do all that, because now you're doing it for some divine, supernatural purpose. And that's the idea I want to get at in my book. It's not even just physical. Muscular Christianity, of course, it's very focused on the physical, but, you know, just the general idea of pursuing this kind of greatness with all of your might and wanting nothing else but the best of yourself, living with no regrets, marshaling your strength towards forging a legacy worthy of remembrance, you know, having that kind of energy is something that should be promoted in Christianity. And I think that if we do promote it, then we can get a lot of young, energetic men, the kind of men who are going to be entrepreneurs, make the companies, have a bunch of babies for the culture. And I just think that kind of men and that kind of ruggedness is something that I'm very much interested in. And I'm sure if you were enticed by the title Muscular Christianity, probably are excited in as well.
Yes.
And yeah.
Let's go.
That'll be my parting message.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Uponi, author of Muscular Christianity. You can find him on YouTube. I believe they can just type in Paul Uponi and they'll find your two channels, Paul?
Yeah, so I guess if you want to be specific, there's Upoli Athletics, which is a fitness account, UPAULI Athletics, and then there's Dr. Upoli, which is my more philosophical account. I think my latest video is about how, responding to someone who said heaven is boring. So I make some theological content there. I make some philosophical content there. I'm just trying to reach the culture in the ways that I think I'm best at, which is like the cultural, like TV shows and analyzing them and how they relate to Christianity, that sort of stuff. If that sounds interesting to you, then you can watch that channel. But other than that, you can buy my book on Amazon. It should be up for hardcover and paperback. I just released a hardcover version of it just like a couple of weeks ago.
Sweet.
And
Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. You have been listening to Spiritual Insurgency with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan on 670 AM The Truth. See you next Saturday. Peace.
Thank you for joining us today on Spiritual Insurgency with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan. For more information or to support the mission of Spiritual Insurgency, visit spiritualinsurgency.org. Join us next Saturday and every Saturday at 10 a.m.